The signs are hopeful. The talk has been optimistic. We're looking forward to Miami football and football across the nation here in 2020. Talking Miami, of course, here on a Saturday morning with Cam Underwood from State of the U. We hope you'll join us for the full hour. Comments, questions, debate topics, just leave them in the live chat. And, of course, subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, because we got two busy guys here. And we just basically work out a schedule between the two of us each and every week. Therefore, when you subscribe, you hit the bell for the notifications, and you know when we're going live two different ways. I set it up on StreamYard, and also I notify everyone on the community page on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, let's get set here. Cam, how are we doing today?
Good, hanging out. Can't complain. So, yeah, having a good one. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. Are we going with hydration today or more of a pleasurable drink?
Hydration.
Okay. I'm right there with you. Very good. Did it ever stop raining there in South Florida?
Just recently, actually. Just, the last couple of days. So it's been pretty good because I've had some free time from the secret day job to enjoy some of the sunshine. So nice. I'm going to actually venture out a little bit after we get done here. But, it's pretty nice. Can't complain.
Okay. We discussed Deshawn Troutman here the other day with the Wholesome One. I'm sure you've got plenty of information on State of the U concerning Mr. Troutman. Our conversation was prior to his commitment. And so he has apparently committed here very just in the last few days. Mm-hmm. Pretty good linebacker, apparently.
Yeah, no, he's a kid who can play. He's a 3-star from Orlando. Goes to high school in Orlando, but he's actually from South Florida. His brother, Troutman, is a kid who is at Louisville, and he was in South Florida playing at a different number of high schools. He was even at Miramar when I was there for like a week. Ended up at St. Thomas, I want to say, to finish out his high school time. So Deshawn is the younger brother of Troutman. So he's from South Florida. And actually I saw Andrew Ivins from 247. He put up a tweet. So it's like Miami has like 13 or 14 commitments. 11 of them are from South Florida, and another 2 of them were born in Dade County, being Troutman and Elijah Arroyo, the tight end who lives in Texas now. Excuse me. Troutman can play. He's got good size. He has good speed. I know that he's rated as a 3-star right now, but I watched the film after, seeing that he had committed and that we were really going after him. And if that's not a 4-star linebacker, I would like to talk to some people and then maybe learn what a 4-star linebacker looks like, because that looks like a 4-star linebacker to me. And I've been looking at players for a long time. I've been doing this thing. So, you look like, as a prospect, similar to Jermaine Grace, who, again, I saw every day for 3.5 years at Miramar. He was a solid 4-star. You look at other guys with size and speed and the ability to play in space like a Troutman does or has. I don't know what to say, but I think that he's going to get a bump sometime soon to be up in that 4-star range. Miami did miss on a kid from St. Thomas Aquinas, Jayden Hood, who committed to Michigan. At linebacker, and then they turned up the heat on Troutman and said, okay, look, sometimes you have to make decisions, and sometimes decisions are made for you. So, by missing out on one, then you go with the other one, and I think that that's a good fit and everything, and I think that it's not just a consolation prize. Like, Troutman is not just okay, cool, well, we might as well, end the class kind of. He's not that kind of guy. So don't get it twisted that we missed on one and then we got another as being like a bottom of the barrel thing. No. We missed on number 1. We went to number 2 at the top of the list. And you'll see his offer list is expanding already, even with things getting closed down due to COVID and whatnot. So you have SEC schools checking on him and everything. There's even, a bunch of us on Twitter who are tweeting about looking at Troutman as a prospect and saying, hey, I think that he's better than we're giving him credit for. And a couple of people were like, hey, man, stop talking, man. The opposing teams, they look on Twitter and everything like that. Like, don't put it out there. Look, there's digital film. He's already committed to Miami. So you have 2 different kind of things where it's like, okay, wait, well, let's go look at this guy now from another program. So I think that the cat's going to get out of the bag that this kid is really, really pretty good. But for right now, he's committed to Miami. Like I said, he's from Dade County, originally moved up to Orlando when he was in 9th grade, which is a couple years ago. I think that was right after his brother graduated from Aquinas. So, or when he was going into his senior year at Aquinas, something like that. But yeah, he's a guy who's from down here. Again, with Elijah Arroyo, we have the majority of this class is from South Florida. And if you're talking about rebuilding this roster in that kind of way, starting local and then going national, which again is one of the recruiting rules, which is still an article feature that I have up on stateoftheu.com, which you should be reading. Miami's doing a very good job with that. There can be a conversation had about maybe doing more with the top end players locally. But if you're talking about getting guys who are from here, who want to be here and want to be Hurricanes, the Miami Hurricanes are doing a really good job at that right now.
Yeah, so if you check out the 247 Sports Composite, this is what Cam's talking about in regards to just looking at the sheer numbers. And when I say numbers, I mean rankings, which obviously are important. They're fairly accurate most of the time, or extremely accurate much of the time, but not dead on. And players' rankings obviously change at times, and a lot of players blossom later. A lot of players are really good players who there's not a whole lot on earlier in their recruiting cycle. So you've got the 38th rated inside linebacker and top 1,000 player in the nation, regardless of position, number 126 in Florida. That's according to the composite. Cam is certainly backing up what we've heard elsewhere, and he's certainly talked to a number of sources who agree with him that his kid is much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a solid 4-star. He's going to be a top 350, 400 player in the country. I want to say when everything is all done and everything. And, yeah, the recruiting rankings are pretty good, but like they get better as time goes on just because you have more data points. So the terminal ones, the ones at the end of the class, those are the ones that are really good, like the best ones in terms of projection, in terms of college potential, NFL drafting, those kind of numbers when you get to the end of the cycle. And I think coming off of a 13-2 season, because he goes to Edgewater, yeah, they got to a state championship game against St. Thomas Aquinas. They lost, but they got there. And coming off a 13-2 season, being one of the key players, one of the central players on that defense that led them to that state championship game and had them in a dogfight with Aquinas for a while. I think that and the evidence of his play and then, the measurables as well, I think that he's going to be a guy who skyrockets.
I'll let you guys know out there that I know that many of the times we finish up the show and we leave a lot of questions and comments on the table. Dive in right now because we've got a few topics certainly on the agenda, but at the same time, I'm carving through the comments from the last several days, and there's a ton of comments, not a whole lot of material that we can respond to. Just your standard, you guys are doing a great job kind of stuff, which we truly appreciate, but not a lot of comments and questions. So dive right now in the live chat if you want to comment, question, debate topic to serve up for Cam and myself. We've talked Jared Williams in recent weeks, but Cam, you're telling me that there's reason to talk about him specifically this week.
Well, Jared Williams is the offensive tackle from Houston who entered into the transfer portal and is debating potentially coming to Miami or not, or to go elsewhere. He said, or it was stated that he was probably going to commit somewhere Memorial Day weekend. If you know your calendar, that is not this weekend. That was last weekend. So things are going on longer and longer. And it's basically seeming to come down to Miami or Baylor, excuse me. So does he want to come out here and play with De'Aaron King, who he's played with before? Or does he go and stay home in the state of Texas and go to Baylor? To me, it's getting towards the point where like you need to make a decision. This cannot go on forever. Where you're hemming and hawing or like, maybe I'll come and maybe I won't. I'm going to pause right now. Bergie, other SEC teams and whatnot are already or have already offered Troutman previously, so I already expect the bump to come later based on those things, not based on the fact that he came to Miami, because we already know that usually players lose rankings when they go to Miami. But that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, back to Jared Williams. Yeah, it's coming to the time that a decision needs to be made. And I actually had this conversation with somebody else about a different topic. But yeah, you cannot just have things go on forever. Cannot just say, okay, well, I'll get to it or whatever. Like, everybody needs to know. You know what I mean? Like, Miami needs to know. Baylor needs to know. The play, it's a thing that just cannot just go on forever. So there's been maybe a thought that a commitment from Jared Williams, wherever he might go, could be coming this weekend-ish, maybe in the near future. Who knows? But yeah, at this point, it's getting just, to me, to be look, you're a grown man because you're a fifth-year senior, so you're 22, 23 years old. You know what I mean? This is not the flight of fancy of a 15-year-old high school sophomore who's committing to the first school that he ever visited on a camp trip because, oh my God, it was amazing. Like, no, you're grown. You know what I mean? So you got to make a decision. And if it is to come to Miami, good, great, wonderful, and glorious. We can use your talent. It will upgrade the offensive line group. Whether you battle for a job or win a job, that's up to you. Just like it was up to Tommy Kennedy when he came in from Butler last year. Nothing will be handed to you, but the opportunity to play is here at Miami. I guarantee you that. It's probably there at Baylor as well. But either way, you got to decide.
Talk Miami football each and every week with Cam Underwood. So, folks, you need to appreciate what you get each and every week. So subscribe, set the notifications, and when we're going live, and Cam's going to give you expert analysis on Miami football. We talk recruiting a ton and obviously get you set for the season, and we'll break down personnel groupings as we get closer. A lot of dates being thrown around across the ACC in the country in terms of when we're going to get football started and people on campus, and it's mostly encouraging. We got Rod the Farva on the line asking about Jayden Hood, who's a Michigan commit. I don't know that we've really talked about him. I know the name, and now that I look him up, wow. So Michigan went down to South Florida, and unless there's a decommit or a change, a flip here, they have got themselves what could potentially be one of the best linebackers in the country.
Mm-hmm. We did a couple weeks ago. That's the kid whose name I couldn't remember. Maybe about a month ago, they were asking me.
When you can't remember a kid's name, that stands out because that's about once a year. So I do remember that.
Right. Yeah. So that was him. Kid who plays for Aquinas. He's everybody's All-American. He looks the part, plays a part, all those kind of things. Did commit to Michigan, and he is the third linebacker of note in the last 7 years to do so. A couple of years, Anthony Solomon from Aquinas last year, 2 years ago, was committed to Miami and then flipped late. And then 6 years ago, Devin Bush from Flanagan, Devin Bush Jr., went up there to Michigan as well. So, Michigan is a national program. They do recruit nationally, and they have had some success down here. It could be possible that he could flip. It could be possible that he stays, But no, Jayden Hood is a great player with all the potential in the world. So that's a big get for Michigan. Especially, or anybody, wherever we were to go. As a small aside, I saw that there's a Florida State fan, one of the few that I actually associate with, Tridentine Knoll on Twitter. And he tweeted, and he's from Michigan. I've never met this guy, but he's from Michigan. He follows Michigan hockey, follows Michigan like high school hockey, high school sports, and things like that. Like, he tweets about like cities and towns that, like, if I were to say them, you wouldn't know them. But for me, I'm like, oh, I know that's right around the corner on Novi, and you know what I mean? And he said that Michigan is turning St. Thomas Aquinas into a pipeline program. Excuse me. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, I'm not the only person to say that. And I said, you're not the only person to be wrong about that. And let me go further. Name me all the players who've gone to Michigan. Or they said the Big Ten, even, if you extend it out. Name me all the players from Aquinas who have gone to the Big Ten. You got the Bosa brothers who follow their family tradition and went to your favorite school down in Columbus. You got Anthony Solomon going to Michigan. You could have now Hood going to Michigan. and whom else of note and consequence from Aquinas. Now, name me all the places that Aquinas players have gone. Miami's gotten 7 in the last 6 years. You know, you got a couple who went to Georgia. You got 2 from last year who just went to LSU. You got Asante Samuel Jr. who went to Florida State. You got James White, who's still in the league, who went to Wisconsin as a running back. You have, you know what I mean? I can name all these different places that Aquinas players go. And that's only talking about the top end of the Power 5. That's not even talking about the Group of 5. That's not even talking about Division 2 or FCS. You're not even talking about all these other places all these players go. Why? Because St. Thomas Aquinas puts out almost more prospects than any program in America. So it's asinine to think that a single program, let alone a single conference, is making this program, this high school program, an individual pipeline feeder program. It's categorically false. It doesn't matter. You can look at any metric that you choose. And I said that to people on Twitter. I said, go, cool. Name me the places that Aquinas players have gone in the last 5 years. Go ahead and name them. I said, okay, debate king. Da, da, da. I said, I'll wait. Because I'm not debating you. I'm having you do the work and you go look it up to show and prove that what you just said to me is wrong.
Folks, basically, if I'm interpreting that correctly to a number of conversations we have here and elsewhere, is that you need to put numbers into context, or you need to put specific examples into context. So, for example, we often have the conversation about recruiting rankings and how important the rankings are, how accurate, and how you have to comprise your roster if you want to contend for conference championships and elite status in college football with, let's say, 4 and 5 stars to a great degree, and then the 3 stars, and then people jump on and they point out all the aberrations that obviously over the course of years, and there being 75 Power 5 programs and there being 130 FBS programs, they're going to be plentiful. But so we could sit here for hours and hours and hours and talk about JJ Watts and so forth and so on, those type of examples. But then if you match them up in context of the mass numbers, you still need 4 and 5 star recruits to win conference championships and compete at that level.
And it's a thing that actually I also tweeted about JJ Watt, because I saw one of the Rivals guys, I don't know if it was Mike Farrell or one of the other national guys that I follow, said, well, Brian Brissy, who was going to Clemson this year as the #1 player in America, said, well, he's already 5 pounds heavier than JJ Watt and blah, blah, blah. I said, JJ Watt grew 4 inches and gained 55 pounds of solid muscle in college. Like, JJ Watt wasn't JJ Watt. JJ Watt was more like his younger brother. You know what I mean? The one who plays fullback. Like, that's the size he was when he was at Central Michigan as a tight end. Go look it up. Because JJ Watt is what, 6'5" or 6'6", 275, 280 now? He was like 6'3", 235. Maybe that heavy. You know what I mean? If you look at a Khalil Mack, same kind of a thing. Outliers are outliers to the point where we can name the individuals. You know, it's like when people talk about, musicians and everything. And like, I get that everybody has a connection with music. Look, there's a lot of people who play piano, guitar, they sing in their spare time. You can create music and have an intimate connection with it. But if I say Madonna, Beyonce, I can say certain people's singular names and you know them because they're different in that same interaction. So like, the context is always needed. And that's my thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a question here from Evan Fian about the thoughts about a defensive back from Nebraska entered the portal. So we've got the 27th rated safety in the country, Henry Gray, committed to Nebraska last September, class of 2020. Mm-hmm. So he's entered the portal, and he's, of course, from Miami Central.
And before he went to Miami Central, Henry Gray sat in my music appreciation class at Miramar High School when he was a high school sophomore. So I know him.
Connections are amazing. Go ahead.
I've spoken about Henry Gray, and look, I'll tweet him on the timeline. Like, I am not best friends with him, but I worked there for 11 years. I announced all the athletic events. I was a teacher there, and he had my class every other day for 100 minutes for a whole school year. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I have a prior standing relationship with Henry Gray, we'll call it. I think that he's a Power 5 player. I've always said that he's a Power 5 player. I think that he's more a safety than a corner. I always thought that, even from when he was at Miramar. I just think that, yeah, I think he's like a half step too slow for a cornerback position, but I think that as like a free safety, I think that he could be really dynamic. I saw him making some plays there. And then obviously when you have one of the better athletes, and again with his size, because he's 6'6'1", you're going to try him at cornerback because that has a higher positional value. You know, it's like if a guy can play second base or shortstop, you're going to play him at shortstop because the value of a shortstop is greater in terms of what it means for the defense and all those kind of things. Same thing with cornerback. So he's a guy who can play. He's a guy who should be at a Power 5 school. He was committed to Miami at one time, and then he backed off that commitment, and then he ended up committing to Nebraska. And then it said that he has an unexpected family situation. And again, with the prior standing relationship with him, I wish him the best with that situation, whatever it may be. And I wish him the best wherever he may land. I do not necessarily think that that landing place is going to be Miami. Just because I think that we need more corners than safeties. And I'm, again, not 100% sure that I would put him at cornerback full time moving forward. So that to me gives me the pause of pursuing him. But I still think that he's going to end up at a Power 5 school. And, you know, I wish him the best. The other part of that question was, do you think that similar things are going to happen with other Floridians who go to Nebraska? I do. Honestly and truly. Jayden Francois, you know, he had that signing day drama where he was going in and out of the gymnasium and he's crying and he's on the phone. You see him gesticulating with the histrionics and everything on the phone because the guy who recruited him let him know literally 10 minutes before his announcement that he was leaving, the coach, to go to a different school. So he's like, yeah, you know, like I committed or I recruited you this whole way. I want to let you know before you go announce, I'm not going to be here. So the school's going to be here. Coach Frost, who's from Florida. Well, he came back to Nebraska. He's a native Nebraskan who's coached at Central Florida. So someone with ties to the state is going to be here. But me, myself, personally, your position coach, who arguably matters to you more than your head coach, unless you play quarterback, you know, I'm not going to be here. And there was that whole thing. I think that Jayden Francois is very short for Lincoln, Nebraska. I think that he is very the time is been ticking on his time going to be there. And yeah, I just don't necessarily think that Floridians are going to continue to go out there, commit out there. I just don't see it. I think that Nebraska always did better with native Californians coming out there. If you look at a Lawrence Phillips as the player, obviously he had the legal issues and the personal behavior. I get it. I'm just saying, before all those issues, if you're just looking at the player, they got a very talented player in Lawrence Phillips to come from California to Nebraska. Now, there might be some of those prior standing personal issue things that I'm not aware of that factored into, okay, why was he getting away from there? That could very well be true. But if you go and look through the history of the Nebraska program, they do better going to the West Coast and bringing them east as opposed to coming to Florida and bringing them west. Now, they did I know everybody's thinking the same thing, and I'm going to say his name. Levante David from Miami's Northwestern in that 2008 recruiting class, you know, we basically took every other player from that group except for him. I get it. Yes, you did get one in Levante, or he might not have been in 2008, but he was a guy from Northwestern who went out there and he did very well. He was a first-round draft pick. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, I get it. I'm not saying that there's none. I'm just saying that the prevalence of players going from Florida to Nebraska and succeeding and doing well and moving forward is low, and I think that that's going to be a thing. So they're going to that's going to continue to not necessarily be the foundation of their program. So if Nebraska is looking nationally, I think that they're going to need to maybe turn their attention from South Florida, where again you can hit that second tier of player and get a Jayden Francois and get a Henry Gray. And I mean second tier, and I mean that with all due respect, because the top tier are guys who are first-round draft picks. You got your Sony Michels, you got your Grandpa Calvin Ridley, you got your Jerry Jeudy's. That's the first tier. That's the top line. Your Frank Ladsons, your Tyreek Stevensons, your Patrick Surtain Jr.'s, your Josh Jobs. Those are everybody's All-American. They're going to come in and play day one. That's the number one tier. But the number 2 tier, you can have all these kind of guys and you can get them and they can be a foundation for your program. But for Nebraska, I don't necessarily see that. So if I were them, would then turn my attention to one of the Texas areas, maybe the Dallas Metroplex, maybe the Houston area, maybe the LA area. I would look at those areas for your secondary ancillary recruiting grounds as opposed to Florida. Although we all know that a South Florida 3-star is probably a 4 or 5-star elsewhere. So I know that you want to go get these good guys from this area. I just don't think that connection is going to be sustainable moving forward and we've already seen it with Henry Gray. I think that we're going to see it with Jayden Francois. And again, I wish he and them both the best as they move forward. But yeah, I think that Nebraska needs to look elsewhere.
You're the recruiting expert. I'm not. I listen and learn. I would love to have the data, and nobody's going to dive into this kind of project because it's exhaustive, to back up one of your final statements there, in that a 3-star in South Florida, with all due respect, I'm just saying I don't know that they're a 5-star equivalent elsewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that is a little tongue-in-cheek because that is a thing that like recruiting fans will say and things like that. I mean, and the thing about it is it's not provable. So like the data doesn't exist because you're not going to take – who's a 3-star from down here recently? Robert Burns, running back. Ended up as a 3-star because he was injured for 2.5 years, whatever. Okay. But you're not going to take him and then drop him off in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You know what I mean? You're not going to take a Corey Couch. There's a perfect example for you. Corey Couch, 5'9", 5'8.5", 5'9" cornerback, 140 pounds in high school, but was an All-American. There was no question when Miami went after him that he could play here. There are limitations due to size and build, but it's not about skill at all or athleticism because he's very athletic. But if you were to drop him in a mid-major town, if you were to drop to Corey Couch in Philadelphia, even, that kid's a 4-star. That kid's probably going to again to somebody's All-American game, you know. But you can't just airlift. You know, I don't have. I'm a Westworld fan, so I don't have the Rehoboam or Solomon multiple realities technology where I can, drop him off somewhere else and then simulate the whole thing. But yeah, you know, it's a thing just where, you know, there's a glutton of prospects down here, and so there are going to be some guys who are underranked on a yearly basis. That's the thing that recruiting analysts and ranking experts have spoken about. I've heard it. I've had these conversations with them. It's just a thing. But it's really just to kind of buoy the fact that, you know, there are so many great players down here, and a lot of them do end up developing and going on to the league where, yeah, you know, you can still find very good quality further down the list of prospects in South Florida than other places. That's kind of the shorthand that's been put to that long idea.
So I consider that to be the talent and the expertise of the scout in question. So if I'm sitting there watching a football game, and if I was able to have the game film to isolate all 22 players, and it was pretty well understood that the talent on the field was equivalent, you know, you're watching an NFL game, for example, or you take it down to the high school level, and you could serve me up 2 equivalent teams in the Miami area where you said these are 2 elite teams. So just about everybody on the field belongs on the field together. I as a football fan and who've been watching for a long, long time could tell you so-and-so won this matchup between, you know, the left tackle and the defensive tackle on down the line. If I had the time to sit there and watch the entire game, the greatness of the scout, I would think, would be the ability to go to Rhode Island or South Dakota or somewhere like that and say, this is a state full of 1-stars. Actually, you know, it's that much of a drop. And there's a couple 2-stars, but this kid's a 4-star. This kid, there was a kid Ohio State plucked from Idaho and Rhode Island here in the last 5 years that were close to 5-stars, that they can tell that they're that good. I wouldn't be able to. They're just whipping that dude. They could be another 2-star who's just whipping that other dude, but they know somehow in equating the speed and the explosion, all the factors, that they're truly a 4 or 5-star. That's the greatness of the scouting.
Yeah, and I mean, it's seeing a kid not for who they are, but who they can be. And it is, I mean, yeah, that's the game. You know, like, I mean, everybody knows I used to be a choir director. I used to teach high school choir, and it's that same thing. It was in music and not in sports, but okay, I'm looking at this freshman soprano, and you know, can't read music or has limited technique and skill, but a love for music, and she wants to get better. It's seeing where she can be after 4 years, and that comes with experience. You know what I mean? So like, I can listen to somebody now and say, cool, I see where you are, and I know where you can go. I've already seen that path. So you can go and you can be that scout who went to Southwest Idaho to watch, you know, this one kid or whatever, and see, okay, he's 6'5", 235, but you know, you look at his family, like his dad's a big dude. You look at this, you look at that, you know, you take into everything in account and say, okay, I can see the projection. I can see the progression of him physically and athletically. And with years of experience to build that projection on, then you can kind of have, that's where the foundation really comes from. It's not just like a random guess, like, okay, this kid looks good in a jersey and he had 7 sacks against, you know, somebody who's not going to, you know, he's going to go pro in something other than sports, you know, the other guy. But you can really see, okay, I remember there was a kid from, you know, wherever, and and he has a similar build, and he's also like this other kid, and he's also like this NFL player, and it's also that. So let me find more about those, and it's all those other layers of data, and then you come all together. You say, okay, there's that, and then that's where the projection in the brain and in the mind comes from, and then obviously you have more film to just go and back that up and say, okay, you know, these athletic traits and things like that, these skills that he has or can develop, or the athletic traits lend themselves to developing the demonstrable skills. And it's all of that kind of goes together.
Talking Miami football each and every week. We don't know exactly when. It's been Saturday mornings, but it has to be scattered throughout the week. Therefore, you subscribe to the channel, you get the notifications to know when we're going live with Cam. All right, here's a question for you, because I probably have the right guy to give me a different perspective on this question that I asked on another show the other day to some very capable writers, but didn't necessarily get the answer I wanted to, because I just think it's elusive. But considering your recruiting angle and expertise, I started watching college football in the late 70s. Throughout the 80s and 90s, sure, you had the Miami dynasty. You had Florida State finishing in the top 5, 14 years in a row. And you could go to the top of each conference. And, of course, it was Ohio State, Michigan. It was Washington, USC, UCLA. And, you know, there was still a power structure. Mm-hmm. But you could choose 20 to 25 teams in the nation. And over the course of a 5 or 6 year span, if you picked up your Athlons, your Lindy's magazine year to year, you were going to see maybe Ohio State's number 3 preseason one year, maybe they're number 20 the next year. Michigan, you know, everybody, there was a distribution of wealth that was more widespread. You had Georgia Tech competing for national championships in Colorado, and it was all over the place. Again, you could select 20 or 25 teams, and over the course of 5 or 6 years, they were competing for national championships. Right now, we're in a situation for the last 5 or 6 years. Ohio State owns the Big Ten. Oklahoma owns the Big 12. Clemson owns the ACC. The SEC's got so much talent that it's been distributed a little bit, but it's basically Alabama's had it locked down since Saban walked on campus. Georgia's good. LSU's good. That's it. I love this sport, but I want to see other teams jump into the mix and have a shot. And sure, we can talk. Miami's could be a breakout. North Carolina could be a breakout. Oregon could be a breakout. They won the Rose Bowl last year. But basically, we're talking about 4 or 5 schools dominating the sport and really 3, but about 4 or 5 in the last 5 or 6 years. Why?
It's a good question. I think that you have elite coaching in multiple places. And I think that those coaches are just doing such an incredible job of talent acquisition. You know, Alabama, they get pretty much who they want. Clemson, they select differently, but they get everybody that they want, and nobody ever decommits or leaves. I'm sorry. Well, you know, Corey Foreman, the number 1 player in this class at present, he decommitted because he's from California, and he thinks he's probably going to, you know, go somewhere else or stay a little closer to home. But that's 2 decommitments in the last 9 years. the third one recommitted and signed at Clemson, so he doesn't count. So, I mean, really. So, yeah, there's 2 decommitments in the last basically almost decade. And, yeah, it's just really, there's just so much that's better. Your sports medicine is better. Your player development is better. So those places that are doing really well are at the top. They're getting the guys that you want. They're developing the guys that you want. They're not leaving. They're not missing on guys that are foundational. I mean, again, and I spoke about this maybe about a month ago, but Clemson is just hit on every single quarterback that they've brought in. And even the ones who leave, Hunter Johnson was a 5-star. Chase Bryce was a 4-star. You just got recruited over by, Hunter Johnson was the number 1 quarterback in his class. You get recruited over the next year with Trevor Lawrence. You know what I mean? So it's like I have a 5-star and I recruit over him with a generational talent. It's just they're minimizing the risk and maximizing the profits basically. So it's crazy to have so many schools in golden ages at the same time. But there's going to come a time when Chinua Achebe, things fall apart. Alabama, like LSU jumped up last year. And I mean, Alabama didn't quote unquote fall apart, but it wasn't Alabama like that. LSU took that mantle. The school in the state south of Michigan, they're going to miss on guys. They're not going to be that forever. Clemson, eventually somebody who's foundational, a quarterback is going to miss, or he's not going to, one of their quarterbacks that they think is going to be great is going to end up being Kyle Wright, as the chosen one to steward the dynasty forward, but he ends up being just a guy. And then, it's not as incredible as it once was. But right now, yeah, you have and then Lincoln Riley is just an offensive genius at Oklahoma. So, yeah, I mean, you have 3, 4, 5 schools in golden ages all together at the same time. It's kind of crazy, but we'll see what happens.
It is kind of crazy. I reviewed about 4 national championship races here in the last few weeks, going back to 83, 84, 90, and some other years. And it's not that I really discovered anything I didn't already know, but just kind of rediscovered. And I ran into Illinois all of those years. It's not being like serious national championship contenders at the end, but like coming down the stretch 10-1, going to the Rose Bowl. And I was like, wow, yes, I remember it. I watched it, but Illinois running into, 4 and 5 and 6 schools in every conference at some point in the 80s and 90s who were competing seriously for national championships. And that's just not happening now. And I hear what you're saying. Things change, and it seems unfathomable that Alabama is not going to be an elite team, but they were 3-8 15 years ago. So things do change. Right. People that are younger, it seems like I remember in, the early 80s when I'd been watching football for 5 years, the things that had gone out for those 5 years, I just thought would always happen because that's all I had seen. So things will change to a certain extent, but it's been going on for.
But I'll say this before I answer the statement that's on the screen. It isn't even that Alabama has to go back to 3-9, but if Alabama is 9-3 every year, 8-4, as opposed to just the juggernaut of life, that's changing. That's different than what we have now. You know what I mean? Like a consistent or in that 8-4, 9-3 range, that's a very different program than the Alabama that you have right now. Speaking of Alabama, Melissa May, I have not said that Miami is going to beat Alabama in the 2021 season opener. I dare and defy you to find a place where I said that. I didn't. I did not. Absolutely not. So, I mean, is it a game, that I'm looking forward to? Yes. Is the game that I think can be season defining for Miami right off the bat? Yes. Why? Because it was season defining for Florida State when, DeAndre Francois tore his knee apart or got his knee torn apart on that play. I'm not claiming it was bad or anything. It was just what happens. His knee exploded, his patella tendon exploded, and then Florida State season nothing was the same. You know what I mean? But I mean, yeah, just sit here and think that, I'm saying, that I'm the blind Miami homer. I can be a homerific fan. I can, look at things through my orange and green glasses, but like with all due respect, that's just simply something I didn't say. Go back to the latest with the past. So, and this is what I was talking about earlier. The question on the screen for those who might be listening on podcast later: Miller Moss is being heavily crystal balled to USC. Do you think Jake Garcia will decommit from USC? And if he does, Miami have a shot at Garcia? Miller Moss is a guy from Bishop Alemany High School out in LA that Miami did previously recruit, but then and has offered, but he's kind of made it known that he's looking in another direction. So we wish him well in that. And then that direction seems to be USC. Jake Garcia, who Miami was recruiting heavily before, committed to USC. And then, so the question is, like, does USC take 2 quarterbacks? Is it going to be Miller Moss in because Jake Garcia is coming out? Things like that, potentially. But I think that it's more of USC. It's more a USC thing than a Miami thing, this whole engagement. So, yeah, I think Miller Moss, it's seeming, that's what the tea leaves are kind of portending at this time, that Miller Moss is going to end up choosing USC. And if he does, okay. But if he does, and if after Miller Moss picks USC, Jake Garcia decommits, there's miles and miles to go before we sleep, before Jake Garcia and Miami need to be in the same sentence again together. There's plenty of other schools that, and Jake Garcia is everybody's All-American, 5-star quarterback, from LA, all that. There's plenty of other schools that are going to be after him. There's plenty of other schools that are after Jake Garcia already. So it's definitely not like there's a thing where it's going to be a 1-to-1 swap or trade kind of a thing. So the first part would need to happen before the second part can even become a discussion. So if Miller Moss commits to USC, then we can start to maybe talk about, but I think that it makes sense walking down that logical or that path of logic. I think that it's maybe a little bit presumptuous to think that Miami is still in that kind of position with Jake Garcia, but I've been wrong before, and maybe I'm wrong again, so we'll see. Do you think the possible additions of numerous out-of-state prospects will grab the attention of more Florida high school players? Miami isn't a fallback school anymore. Maybe. And that's a good question. And, again, go read the recruiting rules. It's still up on stateoftheu.com. I wrote it 2 years ago. It's a feature that I'm very proud of. But I don't think that there are too many out-of-state guys right now that Miami is going after. I mean, we have Elijah Arroyo, who lives in Texas, but he's from South Florida. You have Deshawn Troutman, who lives in Orlando. No, we have one out-of-state commit at this point. I know that we're going after a couple of guys. So 13 commits from Florida and 1 from Texas. And of those 14, again, 13 of them were born in Dade County. And the 14th is Michael McLaughlin, who goes to Stoneman Douglas out in Parkland. But, we can't wait around for local guys. And that's part of the conversation that I was having earlier. Yes, there's a lot of guys who are from here that are committed. There's, a lot of guys who are from here and then live elsewhere now who are committed. But, like, if these other guys who are from here and still are here, they don't want to be here, then we got to find other guys who can play here and then be here. So going after a guy like Elijah Arroyo, that's kind of an outlier, but, Miami was pursuing the defensive end from Connecticut, who was a teammate of Tyler Van Dyke, and then he ended up committing to Michigan just this past week. Okay, that's fine, because he's a kid who can play here, and there was a connection there because the high school quarterback that led him to an undefeated season last season is now the quarterback of the future for the Miami Hurricanes. So you already, you're up there recruiting sorry, somebody's DMing me. I'll deal with that later. But so you're up there recruiting the quarterback. You see the DN, so you already have their relationship together. That's the thing. But it's not really like Miami's cold calling many players. Keyshawn Smith, that was a cold call, and that was a unique situation just because he already had a prior relationship with Stephen Field. But yeah, look, if they don't want to be here, then we don't need them here. And it's to a certain point, all things being equal, I would like to take the local option, and this, it ended up working out, but this was the nature of the discontent of the fan base with Braxton Berrios versus Isaiah Joystick McKenzie. because they're basically the same player. A speed player, a slot player, a kick returner, a punt returner, multifaceted. You can use them in the option game. You can do them in things like that. But you went with the out-of-state guy and not the local guy. I would have rather gone with the local guy personally, even though I love Braxton. I've spoken to Braxton. I still follow Braxton on Twitter. And I think that he was a great Hurricane. Maybe so that wasn't the greatest example. But you get what I'm saying. If there's analogous players here and there, you're going to take the local guy. But if the analogous player locally doesn't want to be here, then you got to go get the other guy. And maybe that's what happened in the Braxton Berrios situation, But I think that, if we're talking about Michigan being a national program, and look, I mentioned Michigan as getting a recruit from Connecticut. That's a 4-star. And then one from South Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas, that's a 4-star. So that's a national recruiting program right there. Boom. Just by the last 2 commitments that they've gotten. Okay. Miami should be able to do the same thing. Whether it's where, whoever, wherever, build the base here. And then you got to augment that by going elsewhere. It's just, again, it's like you want to make a gourmet meal. You could probably go to Publix and get a lot of those ingredients. But if you want those artisanal, truffles, you want this very fresh thing, that you're probably going to have to go to a Whole Foods. You're probably going to have to a farmer's market. You're probably going to have to go somewhere else to get those couple special ingredients to really set that off. Such is the nature of recruiting. I want everybody. It would be great if we could just go to Publix and get everything that we needed. Boom. But if you need something special, maybe you got to go somewhere else to get something special. And that's kind of how recruiting works.
Love it. Good stuff from Cam. As always, I'm trying to get to as many questions and comments as possible. And Q Ray Walker, we appreciate your comments, your questions. You're in here all the time. But some of the questions I bypass because if you really just listen to Cam talk over the span of 1 show or 2 shows, you're going to get a lot of these questions answered. Like, what does Miami need to do to up the ante? What do they need to do to win? What do they need to do to recruit better? Those questions are being answered over the course of the show.
Well, what I will say is I saw the one about getting South Florida kids. The first thing, or the elite South Florida kids, the main thing about that is win. That's the missing ingredient. And then at cornerback, maybe if you had a different coach who was a better recruiter, but that's a conversation for another day. But if you wanted more narrative on that, again, I keep plugging it every time that I'm on here. I'm very proud of it. It for me is a tent pole piece that I've ever written. It's called The Recruiting Rules. It's up on the front page of stateofview.com. And I spoke to a lot of the guys that you guys read, that you guys listen to, whose other content about recruiting you follow. Tyler Donahue from 247, Andrew Ivins from 247, Bud Elliott, who's now at 247, was formerly with us at SB Nation, Michael Felder, David Ferones. There's from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. There's a lot of really great stuff that I got from myself and embedded with things from them. And a lot of those things, and you can get more narrative on that. There's so many good questions. The JT Daniels one, probably, was he considering Miami? I'm not sure.
It is a curious decision that he made with Jamie Newman coming into this year. And then we talked to our 247 sports guy from Georgia and we went through the quarterback room, and man, they're 5 deep with like top 10 at the position in the last 3 years.
And tell me where that's different from past. Because you had Eason, Fromm, and Fields.
They've got 5 of them.
But I'm saying, that was only at the top. You had other guys. You have the other guys who are in the room now who were there with those 3. You know what I mean? Like, Georgia, even and this is going back to when Mark Richt was there. Look, bro, they get quarterbacks. They just stack them on top of stack them on top of stack them, which combines 2 of the recruiting rules: get a quarterback every year and stack elite classes. Now they're getting 5 stars on top of 5 stars on top of 5 stars. Hey, man, cool. Let it work itself out on the field. And then, some other program is going to benefit by getting our runoff. I mean, look, Zach Mettenberger rode the bench there. And then he goes to LSU and then takes them to a national championship. And he was on the bench at Georgia. Like, that's the kind of And go look at when Zach Mittenberger played. You know what I mean? It wasn't last year. It was probably about a decade ago. So this is not a thing that's just new for them.
He was really good, and he parlayed that into a NFL draft selection with Tennessee. Did not win a national championship, though, Cam. He was post national championship.
Okay.
He was even post going to the national championship game in 11. That was Jordan Jefferson.
Oh, it was.
The other player.
I got my ears wrong.
He was with
right.
obviously the two great receivers, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr.,
Right.
and he had 2012 and 13. Anyway, Lamar Stevens is talking about the internet, social media killed parity in college football. It centralized recruiting data and film. Scouts don't have to hunt for players in person. They can do it in their office. What do you think?
I think that the proliferation of digital film has eliminated your regional superstar recruit, as in the guy from Alpharetta, Georgia, who is known in the SEC and ACC circles, but a Michigan, an Ohio State, a Texas, a USC, they would never know about this kid. That's done. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to have... Who's a 5-star from somewhere? I mean, like, you're not going to just have these under-the-radar guys who end up being Bo Jackson, per se. You know what I mean? You're not just going to have this... well, hell, Tim Tebow. You're not going to have a homeschool kid who then goes to a local high school, you know? And I mean, and like, Tebow, look it up, was homeschooled, and you can play for the local school if you're homeschooled, because your homeschool doesn't have a football program or athletic program or choir program, whatever it is. So he went there, and then boom. Now he ends up being known, but like, that's probably, you know, again, that's the outlier. But you're not going to have a similar type player. You're not going to have a homeschool player who plays for a local team in West Texas, Odessa Permian even, and then he's like known in Texas only. Like, no, like, film gets out now. Like, it's on the internet. So I can click around on Huddle and I can see anything and everything. The difference is when, and it really does matter when you see these guys in person. It really matters. And I'll tell the story quickly again. When Sean Burgess-Becker and Calvin Ridley were at Monarch their junior year, they played Miramar in the first round of the playoffs, and we blew them out. And I was announcing the game in the press box and whatever, you know, boom. And everybody was like, okay, this number 2 kid, this Burgess-Becker kid, you know, that's the one Miami's going after, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking. I was like, yo, who's this number 8? This is the kid. They're like, no. I'm like, they're like, number 2. I'm like, no. Number 8. He's a quarterback, wide receiver, running back, fullback, tight end, defensive back. He's doing, it's the first time I'm saying it, but he did stuff on the field, Calvin Ridley as a high school junior, that I'd only seen Patrick Johnson do, Patrick Peterson now. It was that kind of performance from him. And I'm saying, this is the kid. And they're like, no, but you see him in person and it slaps different. It is different, you know? So I know that at the dawn of all of these recruiting sites, yes, things were different because you're only going to have, you didn't have the national guys. You know what I mean? You had some national guys who kind of did some global commentary, but like, it was all the local scouts. It was all the regional guys who got all around their area, and they saw all of these guys. And then that's how a name got known. You know what I mean? It's because the local guy in the Southeast or in Texas or in the Midwest, they saw a kid stand out and they said, hey, I went to a game between Warren Harding and whatever in Ohio, and I saw this kid and everybody should know about his name. That's how the recruiting industry was built. You know what I mean? But it is different now just with digital media. You know, with the fact that you have digital film and anybody can click on it. So it is slightly different, but it's not, that's a part of the situation and scenario, but it still matters, the in-person evaluation and the game performance and, you know, like seeing all of those things on a week-to-week basis and just seeing these kids develop. And also physically, because you get a different sense of the game when you're there. You know what I mean? Whether it's high school, college, or pro, you get a different sense for the game when you're in the stadium, at practice, on the sideline, or wherever you happen to be. Even if you're just in the stands, it's a different thing than just watching it on film. So is it part of the situation that the recruiting industry has changed with social media and the development of digital film? Yes. Has it completely changed it so that all the people are just working from home all the time and they never go and see players? If you follow somebody who does that, then I would suggest that you find other people to follow and different opinions to add to the process or to the folder that you're putting together, I guess.
I was waiting to throw this comment up because I thought it might cover a cam up because it's quite lengthy. But Veggie AJ, first of all, you and Lamar Stevens, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. It's much, much appreciated. I don't know that there's necessarily here, but I'll read the comment because, of course, of the contribution. Enjoy your guys' content, even though I am not a UM fan. So all college football fans, welcome. I'm a lowly CU Buffs fan. Thank you for the nice distraction in these oddly dystopian times. But anyway, stay safe and good day, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Underwood. Again, Veggie AJ, I don't know that I've ever seen your handle before. We appreciate your contribution, and thanks for joining the live chat and jump on in as a Colorado Buffaloes fan. Lamar as well, thank you so much. Ross Jones asked about the best wide receiver prospects in South Florida.
You got to start the list with Ja'Cory Brooks from, Booker T. Washington, but he's going to Alabama. After that, you have Romello Brinson from Miami Northwestern, who was committed to Miami and has Miami in his top 5. Troy Stellato from Cardinal Gibbons over there. He's a 4-star kid who has all the major offers. Those are some of the really great guys. Obviously, you have guys who play both ways. So your 5-star defensive backs, so a Jason Marshall or Corey Collier or any of those guys could loop into that group as well. Jacoby George from Plantation, who has a Miami offer, is at or near the top of that list and should be for a good reason. Brashard Smith from Palmetto is a slot receiver, but he's very good. And the names in the lists go on and on. There's probably another receiver at Booker T. Washington. There's probably one at Carroll City. And there's probably guys who just moved around that I missed their transfer season announcements, or they haven't said anything just because, school's been out since March. But yeah, I mean, the list is long and distinguished every single year. So, you would be wise to go to all the powerhouses. So you go to Miami Central, Miami Northwestern, maybe swing by a St. Thomas Aquinas. Well, definitely go to St. Thomas Aquinas, American Heritage, burgeoning powerhouse now, obviously Palmetto, because they've gotten all these guys. So I would say just swing by all those schools, Booker T. Washington, of course, and just see who's out there, because, you're going to throw a rock and you're going to hit a 4-star, 5-star wide receiver at all those schools, pretty much.
All right, folks, based on the talk out there, there is hope for a college football season in 2020. There's actually hope for a college football season that's going to be relatively close to on time. We're here close to the first week of June, so we've got about 3 months, hopefully, to college football. So lock it in right here for college football coverage across the board. And, of course, Miami with featuring Cam first and foremost. And again, we don't know when we're going live each and every week, so please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, but subscribe to the channel. You get the bell for the notifications to know when we're going live. Cam, what do we have featured on State of the U these days?
Well, it was When Sports Made You Cry week at SB Nation. So that was both positive and negative. So we have some of those pieces up there. Obviously, just still general kind of commentary and analysis. I'm in the last stages of contributor recruitment for this year, so reworking the staff a little bit so we get a couple fresh voices in there for you moving forward. We got a couple theme weeks coming up next week, and then next week there's one, and then there's a week off, and then there's another one in 3 weeks. So we have that. Bunch of recruiting stuff, and then I actually got to get caught up on a couple of recruiting things that I should have written 4 months ago, but hey, whatever. We'll get some of those things up there, but all that kind of stuff. So, we're just there to continue to be there and grow our community. So no matter where you look, whether that's social media, that is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The State of the U. My personal Twitter account is at Underwood Sports, and the website is stateoftheu.com. Wherever you choose to interact with us, please come fan with us, and we'll see you next time.
Cam, if you've got 2 minutes, I got one more question for you because it's very focused. And
I got 2 minutes
about this player in particular at times. So Ross Jones is asking about Mark Pope and why he has not been more successful at the U.
I mean, there's a combination of factors. It's just there's been a little bit of work ethic that's been reported, and just consistency when he's gotten the opportunity. It is kind of that ineffable thing where recruiting and player development is an art, not a science. Because if it was a science, then I would just, put magnesium plus water plus whatever, and then I would get the result that I want. But, when you're dealing with human beings and, dynamic athletes and things like that, and also the changing thing, because I can call a play for Mark Pope, but if the defense has it covered perfectly, then I'm going to hopefully give the ball or look to put the ball somewhere else. So even if I schemed up something to use him to his best advantage, that can then be negated by a well-called defense. So there's a lot of moving factors there. And hopefully, we'll see that he does develop into the player that he was in high school, where he just was able to be dominant at the drop of a dime. And he does have the physical skill set and athleticism to really break out in a spread offense. I mean, I know that it's not the most popular thing in the world with some people. This is why I hashtag it as such. But, in my NCAA 2014 dynasty that I have going on my PS3, because I have both my PS3 and PS4 right over here in the living room, Mark Pope won the Biletnikoff 2 years in a row for me in my offense, and I run a spread offense. And it wasn't that I was, I'm trying to force feed him the ball or whatever. I'm just going through the game. But, if dude is butt naked wide open, I'm going to get him the ball. But, he has that kind of skill set where even if you're like, okay, sure, it's a video game and you're controlling it and you're playing it and da-da-da. But, putting him in a spread offense is what should have always happened. So now he has the scheme that should hopefully take advantage of the prodigious athletic talents that he has, and then he could hopefully, kind of become that player that we expect. So it's been a little bit of a mystery as to why he hasn't done better. And I know his freshman year it was talking about blocking because Ron Dugans was a wonderful blocker, and he wants his wide receivers to be very good blockers. And if you're not a good blocker, you're not going to play, which seems counterintuitive for a wide receiver. And I think it could be a little off-putting for a Mark Pope, but it was part of the thing. So, hopefully his game is developed. Hopefully he's just a little bit more mature, whereas if you come in and just think that things are going to be handed to you, that's not the case. And I'm not even saying that he thought that, but I mean, the actions that we've seen kind of lead to maybe that was part of the situation. But yeah, hopefully he's getting just more mature to the point of cannot take any play for granted, any day for granted. You're going to go out there, you're going to earn it.
I identified half of LSU starting quarterback situation in 2011 when they went to the BCS championship game and got blanked by Alabama. Jordan Jefferson started the championship game. Jarrett Lee must have gotten hurt. He had the better stats. I couldn't remember his name, but Jarrett Lee and Zach Mettenberger was the third stringer, took over in 12 and 13.
Okay.
What Chaos Dolphins is referring to is we do a Florida State show on Tuesday night. One of our analysts there, Jason Parker, for some reason was saying, we need to get Cam on here. We need to talk this up. We need to trash talk. And prior to the Miami-Florida State game last year, we had our Florida State guys and we had Cam mix it up for 2 hours. It was a whole lot of fun. Jason wasn't really referring to anything specific. It was just typical Florida State, Florida, Miami trash talking in the comments section, but he was all fired up and riled up for some reason and wanting a piece of you. But it was involving nothing specific that you said anything wrong or anything that he had issue with. He was just like, we should mix it up and we should have him on and go at it. I don't know what we're going to go at it about, but
right, exactly.
So
okay, yeah, I think this is the guy who tagged me. He's like, "Oh, I'm watching Mark Rogers. The Florida State guys are calling you out. They want the smoke, blah blah." And I mean, my tweet was simple. I was like, "Number one, who cares? Number 2, no, they don't. And number 3, I'm on at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning so they can see what a good show looks like. Like, I mean, that's pretty much it. So, I mean, it is what it is. So maybe another time.
All right. Great stuff from Cam, as always. I appreciate it, man. You know that. And so thanks for coming back on here this Saturday. All right, everyone. We appreciate
man. No worries. You guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon.